In the lively city of Asaba, Delta State, where people hurried about their busy lives, there was a small, quiet church called Rock of Zion Ministry. It wasn't a big or fancy place, but for many, it was like a soft, cozy blanket on a cold night. Pastor Ken, a kind-hearted man with gentle eyes, was the leader of this church. He was known for his powerful sermons that made people feel closer to God. The church members loved Pastor Ken, and they believed his words healed their hearts when life got too hard. But even though Pastor Ken was known for his faith, he was troubled inside. Deep down, he wanted his church to grow, to become big and well-known, just like the famous churches in the city. Pastor Ken's father, Reverend James, had once told him, true success in God's work isn't about having a big crowd or lots of money. It's about being faithful. Still, Pastor Ken couldn't shake off his desire to make Rock of Zion Ministry bigger and more successful. As a young man, he had seen his father struggle financially despite his deep love for God. Pastor Ken had secretly hoped to serve God but also have a comfortable life. When he was 25, Pastor Ken moved to Asaba, full of dreams. He started Rock of Zion Ministry with big hopes, and at first, things were going well. The church was small, but he was happy. His sermons were full of heart, and he cared deeply about the people, helping them in times of need. But as the years passed, the church stayed small. Only a few people came each Sunday, and the money barely kept the church running. Pastor Ken began to feel restless and unhappy. One day, a wealthy businessman named Dele came to Rock of Zion Ministry. Dele was known for his flashy clothes, big cars, and how he always had money to give. Pastors in the city were often excited when he came to their churches, hoping he would donate generously. After the service, Dele walked up to Pastor Ken and shook his hand with a big smile. Pastor Ken, I've heard of your kindness and your sermons, he said warmly. But if you want this church to grow, you need to show the people that you have power. People want to see miracles, Pastor. Pastor Ken was taken aback. He had always believed that teaching about faith and love was enough. But something in Dele's words stirred a feeling inside him. For a long time, he had wondered why his church wasn't growing. He watched other pastors who drove expensive cars and preached to big crowds. Deep down, he knew that Dele's words were touching on something he had been secretly feeling. Dele noticed the look on Pastor Ken's face and leaned in closer. I know someone who can help you show this power, Dele whispered. His name is Baba Timi. He's a spiritual man, not one of those fake healers. Many pastors have sought his help, and their churches became great. Think of it not as turning from God, but as using the gifts that God allows. Pastor Ken felt a shiver of unease. He had never believed in anything beyond God's power. But he was also tempted. That night, Pastor Ken couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about how big his church could be if people saw miracles happen. He thought, maybe this is how God wants to answer my prayers. In the stillness, he prayed, Lord, if this is the path you want me to take, please give me a sign. But if it is wrong, stop me. The next day, Pastor Ken decided to meet Baba Timi, just to talk. Baba Timi's house looked normal from the outside, but inside, it felt airy and dark. Baba Timi was a small man with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through Pastor Ken. You seek power? Baba Timi asked without a greeting, his voice calm but intense. Yes, Pastor Ken replied, though his voice shook. He wasn't sure if he was doing the right thing. Power does not come free, Baba Timi said, but it can be yours if you're willing to give a small part of your faith. In return, you will be able to heal, prophesy, and draw many people to your church. You will save souls, Pastor, just in a different way. Pastor Ken's heart pounded. The deal seemed simple enough. He didn't have to hurt anyone. He just had to acknowledge that the power didn't come directly from God. What will happen to the people I heal? Pastor Ken asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They will be healed, Baba Timi answered, waving his hand. Maybe not forever, but long enough for people to believe. The idea troubled Pastor Ken, but his desire for a successful ministry was too strong to resist. I agree, he said quietly, sealing the deal. Baba Timi handed him a small bottle filled with a strange liquid. Sprinkle this around your church. It will bring the spirits to bless your ministry. On Sunday, Pastor Ken did as he was told. The change was almost immediate. That same day, a woman named Mrs. Oha brought her young son, Jide, who had been born blind. She knelt before Pastor Ken, pleading, "Pastor, please pray for my son. I believe God can use you to heal him." With a trembling heart, Pastor Ken placed his hands on Jide's head and prayed. He felt a strange warmth flow through him. When he opened his eyes, he saw Jide blinking and looking around in awe. "Mama, I can see," Jide exclaimed. The crowd gasped and cheered. They rushed to Pastor Ken, calling him a true man of God. News of the miracle spread quickly. Within weeks, Rock of Zion ministry was filled with people from all over Asaba. Offerings poured in, and Pastor Ken's small, humble church turned into a bustling place of worship. People called him the Miracle Pastor. Soon, he was invited to speak at large events and even appeared on television. But as his fame grew, Pastor Ken began to feel a dark shadow looming over him. The people he healed returned to him, sicker than before. Jide, the boy who had regained his sight, came back, not only blind again but in terrible pain. Mrs. Oha, heartbroken, begged Pastor Ken to help her son once more. But he had no answers. He told her softly, "Perhaps it's a test of your faith," but guilt gnawed at him. Pastor Ken knew deep down that the healings were just illusions, tricks from the spirits. They weren't healing people, they were playing with their lives. The guilt weighed on him, and he began to feel trapped. He had built his fame on lies, and the truth was too heavy to bear. One night, he had a terrifying dream. In it, he saw himself in a mirror, but his reflection was not his own. It was a man with hollow eyes, chained and desperate. A voice whispered, "You sought power, but at what cost?" Pastor Ken woke up drenched in sweat, his heart racing. He knew the dream was a warning. The power he had sought was destroying his soul and hurting the people he loved. Desperate, Pastor Ken went to Baba Timi. "Please, let me be free of this curse," he begged. "The miracles are false, and I feel like I'm losing my soul." Baba Timi's face remained cold. "There's only one way out," he said. "You must confess everything to your church and give up everything you have gained. Renounce the power and beg for true forgiveness." Pastor Ken's heart sank. Could he really let go of the fame, the wealth, and the big congregation? Could he go back to a simple life? The next Sunday, Pastor Ken stood before his congregation, his heart heavy. The church was full, and everyone looked at him, expecting another miracle. But instead, Pastor Ken began to speak, his voice trembling. "I have sinned. I have betrayed you all. The miracles you have seen were not from God. They were tricks. I sought power from spirits, and I was robbed." The congregation fell silent in shock. As Pastor Ken continued, tears filled his eyes. He confessed everything, the paths, the lies, and the fake miracles. "I renounce this power," he said, his voice breaking. "I return to God and beg for his mercy." As he finished, Pastor Ken felt a heavy weight lift from his soul. Many people left the church that day, hurt and confused. But Pastor Ken knew he had done the right thing. In the months that followed, he lost nearly everything, the wealth, the fame, and the large congregation. But what he gained was a peace that money and fame could never buy. He returned to a simple life, preaching the true gospel to a small group of faithful believers. Pastor Ken had learned a hard lesson. True power didn't come from miracles or fame. It came from walking in truth and faithfulness to God. And with each passing day, he felt a new strength growing within him, the strength that only came from living an honest and faithful life. Thank you so much for watching. Do well to subscribe, like, and share.